She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at her grandmother. The rabbit slipped from her fingers. Her little notebook hit the floor, and her cheek turned red with the shape of a grown woman's hand. The first-class cabin had gone completely silent. Not the polite kind of silence people were used to up here, but the stunned, oxygen sucked out of the room kind. And the flight attendant? She stood there, breathing heavy. One hand still lifted like it didn't believe what it had just done. Tell us where you're watching from, because you're going to want to see how this ends. 3 hours earlier, Boston Logan Airport, Gate A7. The terminal smelled like lemon floor polish and overpriced coffee. Gate A7 buzzed with quiet first-class energy, the kind that hums just beneath expensive luggage wheels and muted phone calls. At the edge of the lounge stood Clara Bell, 6 years old, not saying a word. She wore a pale blue dress with a little embroidered bird over the pocket, white socks, and a matching ribbon in her hair. One hand clutched a stuffed rabbit whose ear had been loved to pieces. The other held a red notebook and a short pencil with no eraser. Her grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, stood beside her with the kind of stillness that didn't demand attention. It discouraged it. She wore a slate gray coat, sturdy walking shoes, and a soft scarf the color of ash. Her white hair was pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, not a curl out of place. They didn't look like typical first-class travelers, not flashy, not loud. But when the gate agent scanned Eleanor's ticket, he looked up, paused, and straightened his posture just a little. "Have a good flight, ma'am." Eleanor gave a gentle nod. Clara said nothing, just clutched the rabbit tighter. They were seated in row 1A and 1B, the very front of the plane. Premium cabin, premium attention. But what they received was not exactly that. Monica Graves was lead flight attendant today. She was good at her job, and she knew it. Sharp bun, lipstick that matched the Navy uniform, and eyes that moved like scanners, quick, judgmental, and always ranking. She didn't notice Clara at first, not until she walked past row 1A and her gaze caught a pair of dangling feet. Clara sat upright, legs too short for the floor, quietly observing everything. The buttons, the light above her, the tray table, the buckle. Eleanor sat beside her, glancing once at the drink menu without touching it. Monica paused. No designer bag, no polished heels. A child in the front row? She walked past and leaned into a younger attendant near the galley. "Seat 1A's a child," she murmured. The attendant shrugged. "Cute kid, though." Monica didn't smile. First class isn't for coloring books and apple juice. Clara wasn't coloring. She was writing in her notebook. Lines like, "Window shade, curved like an eye. Grandma's scarf is quiet. The lady with the tray doesn't like me." The plane took off smoothly. Outside the window, clouds stacked like whipped cream. Inside, first class held its usual hush. Business travelers reviewing documents. Older couples sipping still water. A man with noise-canceling headphones already asleep. Clara turned to Eleanor. "Can I look out the window now?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "Of course, that's what it's there for." Monica returned with the drink cart. "Anything to drink?" she asked flatly. Eleanor looked up. "Chamomile, if available." Clara spoke politely. "Orange juice, please. Thank you." Monica didn't respond. She handed over a small cup of juice, then poured hot water into a mug without looking Eleanor in the eye. Then she was gone. Clara looked at her rabbit. "She doesn't like me," she whispered. "She doesn't have to," Eleanor replied calmly. "You didn't do anything wrong." The turbulence was minor, a light bounce, enough to tip the juice. It sloshed, just a little, and a bright splash of orange rolled off the tray table and onto the seat. Clara gasped softly and scrambled to grab her napkin. Her fingers moved fast, blotting up what she could. She reached for her rabbit's foot to wipe the edge, then stopped herself, frowned, and pulled out her own sleeve instead. Monica appeared like a shadow. Her voice cut through the soft air like a paper slice. "This is first class," she said, tight-lipped. not a playground. Eleanor lifted her gaze. She apologized. She should have been more careful in the first place, Monica snapped, turning away. Clara's eyes glistened. Her cheeks flushed, not from guilt, but from something deeper. Shame. Even at 6, she knew when she was being looked down on. I said I was sorry, she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. The next 10 minutes passed in silence. Clara didn't touch her juice again. She didn't open her notebook. She just sat there, stiff, quiet, small. Finally, she tugged gently on Eleanor's sleeve. Grandma? Yes? I think I should say sorry again. Eleanor looked at her, not surprised. If you feel it's right, then yes. Clara nodded. She stood, picked up her rabbit, and tiptoed down the aisle. Monica was folding napkins at the galley. She didn't notice the girl until the voice came. Ma'am? Monica turned. Clara stood a foot away. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry again. I didn't mean to spill. She reached out, gently touched Monica's sleeve. And that's when it happened. Slap. A sharp, flat sound. Quick, clean. Horrifying. Clara's head turned with the force. Her rabbit dropped. Her mouth opened. But no sound came. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just gasped. And then, she looked at her grandma. The cabin froze. A woman lowered her champagne flute slowly. A man took off his headphones. Someone whispered, Did she just hit that child? No one moved. Clara didn't either, until her legs unlocked and she ran. Ran straight down the aisle, straight into Eleanor's lap. The moment her arms wrapped around her grandmother's coat, the silence broke. But not with noise, with tension, with presence. Because Eleanor Whitmore had just opened her eyes fully, and nothing in the air felt the same anymore. Clara didn't sob, not when she stumbled back down the aisle, not when her rabbit lay crumpled somewhere between rows, not even when she dove into Eleanor's lap, clutching the front of her coat like it was the only safe place left in the world. She just held on. Eleanor wrapped both arms around her. Her fingers slid up to the back of Clara's head, slow, firm, comforting. She didn't shush her, didn't whisper, It's okay. She knew it wasn't okay. And Clara did too. The cabin was still frozen. The kind of silence that doesn't happen on airplanes unless someone faints or a pilot announces engine failure. But no alarms had gone off. Just one slap. And one little girl who hadn't cried, yet everyone felt it. Monica was still standing by the galley, arms stiff, face flushed. Her hand was back at her side now, like it didn't want to be associated with what it had done. She turned to face the cabin. She grabbed me, she said. No one touches crew, that's policy. But the voice didn't carry like before. It felt small now, nervous, defensive. A few passengers exchanged glances. No one spoke, but there was something in the air, something building. A collective inhale that hadn't exhaled yet. In row 3C, a woman in a burgundy cardigan leaned forward. She was apologizing, she said. Not loud, not angry, just disappointed. She's 6 years old, came another voice, from somewhere behind. Clara's face was buried in Eleanor's coat. Her breath came in tiny, hiccup-like puffs. She wasn't crying, but her body trembled. Her cheek still bore the faint shape of a palm. Eleanor stayed quiet. She didn't look at Monica. She didn't look at the passengers. She looked straight ahead, one hand gently stroking Clara's back, the other tightening slightly around the child's waist. That's when the first man stood up. Middle-aged, gray blazer, laptop still open in his seat. I saw everything, he said softly, facing Eleanor. If this goes into a report, I'll support you. Eleanor looked at him, just briefly, and gave the faintest of nods. Behind him, a younger woman turned around in her seat. If someone did that to my daughter, she said, I don't know if I could stay as calm as you. Still, Eleanor didn't speak. She shifted Clara slightly in her lap, then reached for the in-seat blanket. She wrapped it around the little girl's legs and tucked it beneath her arms. Clara whispered something against her chest, muffled. Eleanor leaned in, listened, and whispered back, "You don't need to say sorry. You already did." Monica hadn't moved. She looked like she wanted to, but didn't know how. That's when Charles, one of the junior attendants, stepped out from the galley. He approached Monica and spoke in a hushed voice. "What happened?" "She grabbed my arm," Monica said quickly. "I told her not to. She wouldn't let go." Charles didn't respond right away. His eyes scanned the cabin, saw the people watching, the way they leaned forward, alert but composed. He turned back to Monica. "She's a child." Eleanor finally moved. Not a dramatic gesture, just a small shift. She opened her bag, pulled out her phone, unlocked it with her thumb. No fanfare, no drama. She typed 3 numbers. Not 911. Something else. Then raised the phone slowly to her ear. The call was brief. So brief it almost didn't seem important. But for those who watched, and many were watching, it felt precise. Like the pulling of a lever in a machine none of them could see. She said her name. She said a flight number. Then 6 words. "Execute soft ethics lockdown protocol, please." And then she hung up. Clara had fallen asleep against her chest. Or maybe not asleep, just done. Her eyes were closed, fingers curled into the blanket. Eleanor kissed her on the top of the head. A few minutes passed. Then, ding! The intercom beeped. A calm voice, the captain's, came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unforeseen operational issue, we'll be diverting this flight. Our updated route will land us in Chicago O'Hare approximately 45 minutes from now. Thank you for your patience." A ripple moved through the cabin. People turned to each other. No one panicked. But they knew. This wasn't a weather issue. It wasn't turbulence. Something had shifted, and it started in 1A. Monica went pale. She looked at Charles. "They're diverting the flight?" Charles didn't answer. He was already moving toward the cockpit. Another flight attendant, Isabella, stepped out from the galley with furrowed brows. "What's going on?" she asked. Monica's voice was shaky. "She made a call." Isabella looked over toward row 1A, toward Eleanor. The woman who still hadn't raised her voice, hadn't made a scene, hadn't said a word since her granddaughter was slapped. Just one call. Back near the front of the plane, the businessman who had spoken up earlier placed a small packet of tissues gently on Eleanor's armrest. "You did the right thing," he said. Eleanor nodded slightly. Another passenger, older, balding, gold wedding band, approached quietly. "I know who you are," he said, "and I'm glad you were on this flight." Monica had disappeared into the galley again, but not to hide. This time she was on the phone with someone. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was hushed, rushed, anxious. "They're diverting," she called someone. "I don't know what protocol that was. Charles just left the galley." On the other end, a supervisor's voice. "What did you do?" "She touched me. She wouldn't let go. You slapped a passenger," the voice said flatly. "A child." "I didn't mean to." There was a pause. "You don't have to," came the reply. "The report's already in motion." Back in the cabin, passengers began speaking, not loudly, but clearly. She was calm the whole time. The girl didn't even raise her voice. She tried to say sorry, twice. They didn't belong? That's what she said? The air changed, not from altitude, not from pressure, from unity. Eleanor hadn't asked for it, but she had drawn it. In 2C, the woman in burgundy leaned forward again and spoke to no one in particular. "People don't forget silence like that." The man across from her nodded. She didn't have to yell. She had power the moment she stood still. Another voice added, "It wasn't just about the girl. It was the way that woman looked at her, like she didn't belong. That's what did it." And that's when it hit everyone. This wasn't just a slap. It was a sentence. "You don't belong here." And it had reached the wrong child, with the wrong grandmother. Up front, Eleanor closed her phone and placed it back in her coat pocket. Clara shifted in her lap, eyes still closed, brow softening. "You okay, sweetheart?" Eleanor whispered. Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. The world around her had already begun to change. By the time the captain finished his calm but cryptic announcement, the plane had shifted. Not in altitude, not in turbulence, but in energy. People sat straighter. Faces turned toward the front. Silence lingered, but now it had purpose. Not the hush of luxury, but the weight of awareness. Something had happened. Something that wasn't going away. Clara remained curled against Eleanor's chest. Her body relaxed now, but her cheek still pink where Monica's hand had landed. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked under the blanket, and Eleanor's hand hadn't stopped stroking her hair. She hadn't spoken a single word since the call, and she didn't have to. A man in 3A adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat gently. "I've flown this route 48 times in the past 6 years, he said quietly, to the woman beside him. "I've never seen a flight get diverted without weather or technical issues." "Me neither," she replied. "And I've never seen a 6-year-old handle something like that without screaming." He nodded. She didn't flinch, just turned back to her grandmother. In the galley, Monica stood stiffly beside the service counter. Her knuckles were pale where she gripped the edge. Her phone call had ended with words she hadn't expected. "Do not speak to any passengers. Do not make another move. Await instructions at O'Hare." It wasn't just protocol. It was tone. Final, corporate, cold. Monica turned to Charles, who was back from the cockpit. "They're really diverting?" Charles didn't answer. Instead, he took a clipboard from the jump seat, flipped through pages, then paused, reading something that made his brow furrow. Monica moved closer. "What is it?" Charles glanced at her. "You don't know who she is, do you?" Monica's eyes narrowed. "She's just some grandma." He shook his head slowly. "That's Eleanor Whitmore." Blank stare. "Federal judge, Massachusetts Supreme Court. She chaired the committee that wrote the Passenger Ethics Compliance Act back in 2017. Silence. "And now," he added, "she oversees final review of the FECG system, the one that scores our airline's ethics ratings." Monica's lips parted. "Wait, the Eleanor Whitmore?" Charles nodded. "You didn't just slap a kid. You slapped the wrong kid." Back in the cabin, another passenger stood. This time a woman in her 50s, smart blazer, reading glasses clipped to her collar. She approached Eleanor gently, with a kind of quiet reverence. "Ms. Whitmore," she said softly, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry that happened. To both of you." Eleanor looked up and gave the woman a small, respectful nod. "I appreciate that," she replied, her voice low, steady. The woman hesitated. "If you plan to file anything official, I'd be honored to be a witness. I'm in seat 2C. Eleanor gave a polite nod again. "Thank you." The woman didn't linger. She returned to her seat, but others noticed. And then, one by one, they started to move. Not loudly, not like a protest, but like a current was pulling them. A young man from row 4 approached Charles near the galley. "She didn't do anything wrong," he said, voice tight. "And we all saw it." Charles nodded slowly. "I know. Are you reporting it?" "It's already been flagged." The young man looked back toward Eleanor and Clara. "Good," he said. "Because if you didn't, we would." Monica leaned against the wall. Her stomach felt cold. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was becoming something else. A movement. A verdict being written without words. Somewhere mid-cabin, a teenage girl reached into her backpack and took out a sketch pad. She began sketching Clara, just her face, gentle, soft, stoic. Her mother leaned in, whispering, "What are you drawing?" "The bravest kid I've ever seen." In row 1A, Clara stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered, then opened halfway. She looked up at her grandmother. "Are we still flying?" Eleanor smiled gently. "For a little longer." "Did I do something bad?" Clara asked. her voice raspy from sleep. "No, sweetheart," Eleanor said. "You did everything right." Monica, in the galley, paced in short circles. She turned to Isabella, who was quietly preparing water for tea. "This is getting out of hand," Monica hissed. "They're making it bigger than it is." Isabella didn't respond. "She touched me," Monica added. Isabella set down the teapot and finally looked up. "She's 6. She grabbed my sleeve." She was apologizing. "She didn't belong in first class," Monica snapped, instantly regretting it. Isabella's eyes went hard. "You don't get to decide that." Eleanor was now fully upright in her seat. She wasn't holding her phone anymore. It was tucked away, but her presence had shifted. She was no longer just a quiet grandmother. She was a witness, a figure, and everyone around her could feel it. The ripple effect continued. The older man in 3A closed his laptop and walked forward. He didn't say anything to Eleanor. He simply stood beside her row, not blocking, not demanding, just standing, a physical symbol of support. Others followed. The woman from 2C, the young man from row 4. Even the mother with the sketching daughter stood near the aisle. Passengers weren't panicking. They were taking a position. Monica peeked out from the curtain and saw them. 6, 7, now 8 passengers standing quietly near row 1A. Not in protest, not chanting, but like something sacred had happened there, and they were guarding it. Monica's breath caught. She stepped back into the galley. "I didn't mean to," she whispered to herself. But the air didn't care. The moment had passed, and now the consequences had arrived. Charles walked toward her. "They're waiting for what happens next." Monica looked at him. "What do I do?" Charles said nothing for a beat. Then, "You listen." The curtain parted again. Another attendant walked through, clipboard in hand. She leaned into Charles, whispered something. He nodded, then looked at Monica. "You've been asked to step forward when we land." Monica swallowed. "By who?" "Director Ortega, head of flight operations. He's meeting the flight at the gate." Clara, in 1A, had sat up now. Her rabbit was back in her arms. She looked around the cabin, eyes scanning the quiet line of people standing nearby. "Why are they all standing?" she asked softly. Eleanor leaned in. "Because they saw what happened, and they're letting the world know it mattered." Clara blinked. "But I didn't say anything." Eleanor smiled. "Sometimes, not speaking is the loudest thing you can do." By now, the cabin wasn't just quiet. It was intentional. There was no casual chatter, no clinking of glasses, no sound but the hum of the engines and the subtle shift of passengers realigning their posture around row 1A, as if that space had become sacred. It wasn't loud, but it was happening. The verdict, the turning. And Monica Graves could feel it in her bones. She stood in the galley, shoulders tight, watching the curtain sway slightly with each movement of the aircraft. She hadn't dared peek through again. Not since seeing 8 passengers standing, not one of them yelling, not one raising a phone. No hashtags, no rage. Just witnesses, quiet ones, which, somehow, was worse. Inside the cabin, Clara had propped herself up now, rabbit in hand, blanket across her lap. Her cheeks were still pink, but the swelling had faded. She looked small, not in a pitiful way, but in the way children get quiet when they know the world has shifted and don't yet know how to put it into words. She turned to her grandmother. "Are we going to be in trouble?" Eleanor adjusted her scarf. "No, sweetheart." "Then why are we landing somewhere else?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. She looked ahead, hands folded calmly. "Because," she said, "sometimes when something wrong happens up here," she gestured gently toward the cabin, "the ground needs to hear about it." In row 3C, the woman in the burgundy cardigan whispered to her seatmate. "She still hasn't raised her voice. Not once." The man nodded. "Power doesn't have to yell." Director Raul Ortega, head of flight operations for East Union Airlines, was already waiting on the ground at O'Hare. Dressed in a pressed black suit, with a name badge clipped above his heart. He stood at gate 27A with 2 uniformed airline security officers behind him. His phone vibrated. Text: Flight 881 confirmed diverted. Ethics flag activated. ETA 12 minutes. He exhaled, slipped the phone back in his pocket, and rolled his shoulders. He had been through reroutes before, weather, emergencies, even one in-flight proposal gone horribly wrong. But this was different. This was the first time someone had triggered the passenger ethics soft lock protocol in real time. And the person who triggered it? Eleanor Whitmore. The name hit different. Not just because she was once a federal judge, but because she helped design the very system that just grounded his plane. Back in the sky, Charles returned to the galley. He looked at Monica, who hadn't moved. "They'll be boarding in Chicago," he said flatly. "Director Ortega's coming on board." Monica turned slowly. "So what does that mean? I'm getting suspended?" Charles didn't reply, but his eyes said it all. Monica pressed her lips together. Her voice cracked. "She touched me. That kid grabbed my arm. She wasn't even crying. What kind of 6-year-old does that?" Isabella stepped in from the curtain. "The kind that's used to being dismissed," she said calmly. "The kind that's already learned to apologize for being somewhere people think she shouldn't be." Monica looked between them. "So what? She's some kind of VIP?" Isabella shook her head. "She didn't need to be. But you made the mistake of thinking only VIPs deserve respect." The cabin lights flickered gently as the captain announced descent. Seatbelt signs chimed. But no one moved. No one rushed to get laptops packed or shoes on. Instead, they sat still, watching 1A, watching the curtain, watching each other. And beneath it all, a tension grew. Not of conflict, but of expectation. Something was about to happen. Something had already started. The wheels touched down with a soft thud. Brakes eased the aircraft into the gate. As the plane rolled into position, the silence in the cabin turned almost physical, like it could be folded into paper and passed around as testimony. Then, as the engines powered down and the cabin lights brightened, the curtain parted, and Raul Ortega stepped in. He paused just inside the doorway, scanning the rows. His eyes landed first on Monica, now pale, hands clasped in front of her like a student called to the principal's office. Then he looked at row 1A, and when he saw Eleanor, he straightened his posture immediately. He took a respectful breath and said clearly, "Ms. Whitmore." Eleanor looked up, calm as ever. "On behalf of East Union Airlines," Raul continued, "I offer you and your granddaughter a formal apology. We are deeply sorry." Clara looked up from her blanket, eyes wide. Raul then turned toward Monica. "Ms. Graves?" Monica blinked. "Yes, sir." "You are suspended from all active duty, effective immediately. You will be escorted off the aircraft and placed under internal review." Monica opened her mouth. No sound came out. She closed it again. Raul didn't look at her a second time. Instead, he turned back to Eleanor. "If there's anything you need, Ms. Whitmore, our team is ready." Eleanor nodded once. "That won't be necessary. My granddaughter and I just want to go home." Raul gave a nod in return. And then, quietly, reverently, he stepped aside. Passengers didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But one by one, they stood. Not in protest, not in excitement, in solidarity. As Eleanor rose from her seat, holding Clara's hand, the aisle opened like a parting tide. Some nodded. Some whispered, "Thank you." A few placed gentle hands over their hearts. And Clara? She held her rabbit close and looked around with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Why are they all looking at us?" she whispered. Eleanor squeezed her hand. Because sometimes the people who are quietest end up reminding everyone else what matters. At the front of the plane, Monica stood between the 2 security officers. Her face was stiff, but her eyes looked empty. She didn't speak. She didn't protest. Because she knew there was nothing she could say that would outweigh the moment she lost control. And everyone saw it. Raoul waited until Eleanor and Clara were off the plane before turning to Monica. "You didn't just slap a child," he said. "You compromised the ethical standing of this entire airline in front of 34 passengers, 3 compliance officers, and 1 woman with full override access to the Flight Ethics Compliance Gateway." Monica said nothing. "You've cost us over $290 million in paused contracts, route freezes, and ethics downgrades in the last 4 hours." Still, she didn't speak. Because what could she say? Outside the gate, in the terminal, Eleanor and Clara walked through the wide, echoing space, hand in hand. No media, no flashbulbs, just announcements and shuffling feet. Clara looked up. "Are we going to have to talk to anyone else?" "No," Eleanor said gently. "Not unless we choose to." Clara nodded. Then, "Did we do something big?" Eleanor smiled, just slightly. "We didn't shout. We didn't fight. We just let people see what was true." Clara thought for a second, then said, "I think the whole plane saw it." Eleanor nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, they did." Chicago O'Hare smelled like coffee, bleach, and quiet decisions. Not the kind shouted across phone calls or slammed onto desks. The kind that come in formal emails, meetings behind closed doors. The kind where no one raises their voice, but people still lose their jobs. Eleanor Whitmore didn't look like someone who just diverted a plane and froze nearly $300 million in airline contracts. She looked like someone escorting her sleepy granddaughter through a busy terminal. And Clara, she looked fine, a little tired, still holding her rabbit by the ear, but calm. And if you didn't know what happened on Flight 881, you'd never guess that this quiet, silver-haired woman and the small child beside her had just stopped an industry in its tracks. Eleanor didn't check her phone, didn't respond to the messages that had already begun buzzing from legal departments and compliance boards. She didn't need to. The system was moving now, and it no longer needed her push. "Do you want a snack, sweetheart?" she asked. Clara blinked up at her. "Like crackers?" "If they have them." Clara nodded. "But not the dry kind, the round, buttery ones." Eleanor smiled. "We'll look." They walked like any other grandmother and granddaughter, except they weren't. And even if no one at Gate B11 recognized them, some would find out later. Some already knew. Back on the plane, Monica Graves sat in the jump seat, still flanked by security. Her badge had been removed. Her crew pin was unclipped. Her face had gone from red to pale to blank. Charles stood nearby, arms folded. She didn't meet his eyes. "They're making an example out of me," she muttered. Charles didn't reply. "They're acting like I assaulted her." He finally spoke. "You did." Monica shook her head, voice rising just a hair. "It wasn't that bad. You hit a child." Monica paused, then snapped. "She touched me first." She was saying sorry. "She grabbed my arm." "She's 6. The words landed flat, final. Monica looked down. Her hands twisted in her lap. "She didn't even cry," she whispered. "No," Charles said. She looked at her grandmother. That was worse. Inside East Union's crisis response room, 10 floors above the airport, a dozen executives sat around a U-shaped table, phones buzzing in silent mode. On the wall was a live ethics dashboard. A red bar blinked across the screen. FECG score, non-compliant. Immediate action required. The head of legal, a woman in her 50s with sharp glasses and an even sharper tone, turned to the CEO. She used the soft lock protocol. She didn't even escalate to full blackout. That's restraint. The CEO leaned forward. "How much time do we have before the press finds out?" Someone across the table replied, "I give it an hour, maybe less." Meanwhile, Eleanor and Clara sat on a padded bench near the pretzel stand. Clara was munching on buttery crackers, swinging her feet gently. "Are they mad?" she asked. Eleanor tilted her head. "Who?" "The people who work for the plane. Some of them." "Are you mad?" Eleanor took a slow breath. No, I'm tired. Clara nodded. Me too. Eleanor watched her for a moment. You know, not everyone stands up when something's wrong, but today, some people did. You helped them do that. Clara didn't respond right away. Then she said softly, but I didn't say anything. Eleanor leaned in. Exactly. Across the terminal, a middle-aged man in business casual passed by, stopped, and then turned. He approached Eleanor cautiously. Ms. Whitmore? He asked. Eleanor looked up. I was in row 3, he said. I wanted to thank you for what you did, for how you did it. Eleanor gave a small nod. Thank you. He looked at Clara. You were very brave. Clara blinked at him, then offered him a cracker. He chuckled. I'm good, but thank you. As he turned to walk away, he added, I hope they learned something from this. I know I did. In the East Union press suite, the communications team was scrambling. Draft statements, media responses, internal emails flagged for urgent. One of them turned to the ethics officer. Do we confirm her identity? The ethics officer exhaled. There's no point in hiding it. Everyone on that plane knows. By tonight, half the industry will. At a nearby gate, Isabella stepped off Flight 881 and checked her phone. There was a message from her sister, who had already heard. Was that the judge from Boston? Was she really on your flight? Isabella replied, Yes. And she wasn't just on the flight. She made us all stop and think. Inside the airport lounge, Eleanor sipped tea. Clara leaned on her shoulder, eyes fluttering. Grandma? Yes? Will we get in trouble later? Like news trouble? Eleanor smiled faintly. If we do, we'll tell the truth and let people see it for themselves. Clara thought about that, then asked, Did we fix anything? Eleanor glanced down at her, kissed her temple. We started something. Back on the tarmac, Monica was escorted down the crew ramp. No handcuffs, no yelling, just the weight of her own silence. She didn't cry, but her steps felt heavy, because what hurt more than the suspension was the fact that no one came to her defense. Not even one person. That silence. It felt louder than any punishment. As the sun lowered over O'Hare, casting golden streaks across the floor-to-ceiling windows, Eleanor and Clara walked toward the connecting gate for Boston. They moved slowly, calmly, together, and from one corner of the terminal, a flight attendant, not from East Union but another airline, watched them pass. He didn't approach. He just stood there, cap in hand, quietly nodding, because even without knowing the full story, he knew what he'd witnessed. Grace under fire, power in silence, and a child who reminded a whole plane what decency looks like. The airport lounge in Boston Logan was quiet when they arrived. Eleanor didn't look like someone who had just changed the course of aviation compliance overnight. She wore the same pale blue scarf, her silver hair neatly tucked behind her ears. But this time, as she walked through the lounge holding Clara's hand, every East Union staff member lowered their eyes. They didn't greet her. They didn't dare, because word had spread, and it wasn't just internal. Overnight, the passenger ethics lock protocol was trending on internal airline boards. Staff in 3 other airlines were already whispering, "Did you hear who used the soft lock? The woman who helped write it." In a private corner of the lounge, Eleanor finally picked up her phone. She hadn't touched it in nearly 18 hours. There were 32 missed calls, dozens of messages, and one secure ping from an encrypted line that read, "Major breach confirmed. FECG log shows verified override from E. Whitmore. Activation timestamp 0327. But it was the next line that mattered most. "You still hold final override authority. Initiate cascade?" She didn't hesitate. She tapped back. "Yes. Activate cascade. Delay full public release. Begin protocol briefing within 48 hours. In D.C., the moment that message arrived, an entire subcommittee at the Department of Transportation shifted into motion. Not because it was some dramatic announcement, but because that one sentence triggered a federal ethics audit across 3 airlines and a temporary $290 million contract hold across all compliance-sensitive vendors tied to East Union. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But to people who knew how the industry worked, it was a tremor before the earthquake. Back in the lounge, Clara sat with her feet dangling off the leather chair, sipping orange juice. "Grandma?" "Yes, dear." "Is everything going to change now?" Eleanor gave her a long look. "That depends." "On what?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "On whether they're ready to learn." Halfway across the country, at East Union headquarters, a tense board meeting was underway. Screens displayed charts, heat maps, financial risk forecasts, all blinking red. The CFO, sweating through his collar, gestured toward the screen. "We've had 6 vendor suspensions in 12 hours. 1 major investor already froze funding pending our ethics recovery report." A junior executive piped up. "This wasn't a violent incident. Can't we just reframe it as a misunderstanding?" The room fell silent. Then the general counsel spoke. "She wasn't just a judge. She's Eleanor Whitmore. She co-wrote the Federal Passenger Ethics Charter. She's the only civilian who still holds real-time override access to the FECG." The CEO's fingers steepled. "So," he said slowly, "she didn't just pull a lever. She designed the entire system the lever is attached to." Meanwhile, a quiet meeting took place behind closed doors at the FAA regional office. A young black woman in a tailored Navy suit stood before a room of agency heads and said, "This isn't about one child. It's about who gets to feel safe at 30,000 feet. It's about how the system responds when someone crosses a line, especially someone in uniform." She paused, then added, "Ms. Whitmore didn't just report a violation, she exposed a culture." There was silence. Then slow nods. Later that night, Clara lay curled up in the hotel bed, rabbit tucked under her chin. Eleanor sat by the window, watching the lights of Boston glitter like quiet stars. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't work. It was from someone saved under the name Julian W., Senate Ethics Subcom. "Heard what happened. We always knew it might take a real incident to force implementation. Do you want a seat at the hearing next month?" She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No seat. Just send the transcript to the training board. Let the crew hear her story themselves." Back at East Union HQ, PR team scrambled to prepare a revised version of their internal crew ethics training. Instead of the typical outdated slides, they began building a case study module titled Flight 881, The Cost of One Slap. They pulled testimony, eyewitness reports, timeline summaries, and they included one recorded statement that came not from Eleanor, but from Clara. The day after the incident, Clara had sat with a soft-spoken FAA official who asked, "Do you remember what happened before the lady hit you?" Clara nodded. "I said I was sorry." "What did you feel after she hit you?" Clara paused. "I didn't feel hurt. I felt like I shouldn't have been in that seat." "Why?" "Because she looked at me like I didn't belong." The interviewer's pen froze mid-note. Clara continued, "But then my grandma held my hand, and I remembered I was exactly where I was supposed to be." That clip, just 26 seconds long, made its way across aviation training centers. Some cried, some got uncomfortable, but most stayed quiet, because nothing hits harder than truth spoken softly by a 6-year-old. At Logan Airport the next morning, Eleanor checked them in for their return flight. The staff didn't say much, but their posture changed. More careful, more deliberate. And when they handed Clara her boarding pass, they didn't just hand it over the counter. They crouched to eye level and said, "This is yours. Have a good flight." Clara smiled shyly and nodded. "Thank you." It was small, but it was different. On board, as they settled into row 2A this time, the new flight attendant, mid-30s, sharp uniform, gentle demeanor, approached and said quietly, "Ms. Whitmore, my name's Anya. I'll be serving your row today. Just wanted to let you know we're honored to have you both aboard. Eleanor looked at her evenly. Thank you. Then Anya turned to Clara. And I brought extra crackers, the buttery round kind. Clara's eyes lit up. You read the report? Anya chuckled. I read your quote, actually. Then, lower. It helped a lot of us remember why we do this. The plane took off smooth, calm, without turbulence. As clouds drifted past the window, Clara leaned toward her grandmother. Are we safe now? Eleanor brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Yes, darling. But more importantly, so are others. They hadn't even landed in Boston yet when the story broke. Not through tabloids, not through YouTubers fishing for drama, but on an anonymous internal crew forum called WingSpeak, where pilots, attendants, and operations staff shared stories in half-trust. Row 2, first class, elderly woman with a child. She pulled the ethics lock. Word is she didn't even raise her voice. They say it was her, the one who wrote part of the FA charter. The comments exploded within hours. But it wasn't the story of Eleanor Whitmore that made the thread go viral. It was Clara's quote. I didn't feel hurt. I felt like I didn't belong. Within 2 days, crew members from 5 other airlines began sharing their own stories. I once saw a white couple complain about a Latino dad sitting up front with his daughter. He just moved to avoid the scene. No one reported it. An old man in uniform had to argue for a wheelchair at LAX. The gate agent rolled her eyes. I was too junior to speak up. I still feel sick about it. A little black girl once gave up her seat for a crying white woman. Not because she had to, because the crew made her feel like she should. They called it the Clara effect. Because it wasn't about what she said. It was about how clearly she saw the wrong and how quietly she stayed dignified. At the same time, internal pressure at East Union kept rising. 3 VPs were summoned to explain their silence. The CEO issued a bland press statement calling it a regrettable incident. But regret wasn't enough. Because across the country, people weren't just angry, they were inspired. And inspired people don't want apologies, they want change. In Atlanta, a former crew trainer named Simone Graves uploaded a video titled, Why Flight 881 Matters More Than You Think. It was just her in a living room, raw lighting, no makeup. She spoke calmly. I worked 11 years in aviation training. And I'll tell you something we never taught crews properly. How to treat passengers with quiet power. We taught de-escalation, sure, but we never taught recognition. We trained people to handle complaints, but we didn't train them to recognize when they were the problem. The video hit 1.8 million views in 48 hours. She ended with this. If a child can see injustice before we do, maybe it's not the child that needs training. Back in Boston, Eleanor watched all of it from a quiet distance. She didn't post, she didn't comment. But Clara saw snippets. She saw her quote on TV, in articles, on memes. She wasn't sure how to feel. Am I in trouble? She asked. Eleanor smiled. No, darling, you're a reminder. The next afternoon, Eleanor received a call from Federal Aviation Ethics Commission, FAEC. A low voice said, We want you back at the table. We're rewriting the ethics response guide. We need someone who's done more than write rules. You've lived them. Eleanor paused. I'm not the face you need. The man replied, You're not the face we deserve either. But right now, you're the voice we need. The very next day, 3 unexpected things happened, each from different corners of the country. East Union grounded the entire Flight 881 crew, pending investigation. Not just Monica, the captain, the co-pilot, the other flight attendants who said nothing. It sent shockwaves, not out of cruelty, but accountability. A coalition of disability and youth advocates demanded a new passenger dignity policy, including specific provisions for minors and senior citizens. A black pilot in Los Angeles posted a thread titled, I fly planes for a living, and I still get asked if I'm lost when I walk into first class. The thread received 72,000 retweets and ended with, If a 6-year-old can call this out, What are we waiting for? Later that evening, Clara sat curled up on the couch watching cartoons, her stuffed rabbit beside her. Eleanor scrolled quietly through emails when something caught her eye. A message from the CEO of a regional airline coalition. Would you consider hosting a closed seminar with our lead trainers? We're rewriting our internal behavior code, and we want to start with real stories. She thought for a moment, then typed, I will, but only if the first 30 minutes is spent listening to frontline crew, not legal counsel. Across America, change was stirring. Not loud, not perfect, but real. The media called it a reckoning. Airlines called it a PR crisis. But in small corners of crew lounges, gate desks, and policy rooms, people just called it by her name. Let's not have another Clara moment. Translation, let's not let silence win again. That weekend, Eleanor and Clara walked through Boston Common, ducks waddling near the pond. A young woman jogged past, then doubled back. Sorry, she said breathlessly. Were you on that flight? Eleanor nodded slightly. I just wanted to say thank you, the woman said, for making it visible. Clara looked up. Visible? She asked. The woman smiled. Sometimes people don't believe a thing's real until someone brave points to it. Clara blinked, then said, I didn't point. I just looked. The woman knelt to her level. Sometimes that's all it takes. Back at Eleanor's townhouse that night, she opened a file on her computer titled Clara Protocol, Draft 0.1. It began with these words. If a child feels unsafe in a seat she has paid for, then the system has failed. And if the system stays silent when dignity is violated, then we no longer have a customer problem. We have an ethics collapse. She saved the file, then leaned back, watching Clara sleep. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel tired. She felt like something had finally begun. The room was colder than it looked on TV. Everything inside the Senate subcommittee hearing room felt controlled. Muted brown tones, no sunlight, just recessed lighting and old carpets that had seen too much. At the center, a long mahogany table. Behind it, rows of chairs, staffers, press, lawyers. And at the witness table, Eleanor Whitmore. Her scarf was different this time, no longer soft blue. Today, it was deep gray, almost steel-colored. She didn't dress to appear warm. She dressed to be clear. We call this hearing to order. The Senate Subcommittee on Aviation Ethics and Passenger Rights will now proceed. A woman in a navy suit stood, adjusted her mic, and began reading from a folder. Today's hearing addresses the ethical failure aboard Flight 881, where a minor passenger was physically assaulted by a uniformed crew member and subsequent inaction by on-duty staff. Cameras clicked, but Eleanor didn't blink. She wasn't here for the noise. The first hour was procedural. Charts, statistics. A representative from East Union Airlines read a stiff apology. We deeply regret the incident. We are reviewing our crew training protocols. We're committed to restoring public trust. It was corporate choreography, until a senator leaned forward and asked, Do you know who Eleanor Whitmore is? The rep shifted. Yes, sir. We became aware of her role shortly after the event. And you didn't think to check your own compliance dashboard, where her name is listed under Tier 1 Ethics Architect? Silence. A few clicks in the gallery. The senator leaned closer. Sir, your airline was just slapped by the person who designed the system you ignored. Then it was Eleanor's turn. She stood, calm as ever, and approached the mic. I am not here to seek punishment, she began. I am here to remind this industry of something it has forgotten. A pause. No sound. When my 6-year-old granddaughter was slapped by a uniformed flight attendant, the real damage wasn't physical. It was systemic. She let the words settle. The moment that crew member raised her hand, 5 other employees said nothing. That's not one failure. That's 5 silent approvals. A senator, older, worn tie, asked gently, What exactly did you trigger with your override, Ms. Whitmore? Eleanor didn't dodge. I activated a Level 4 cascade under the Passenger Ethics Lock Protocol. That includes real-time suspension of ethics-related contracts, a compliance blackout, and a funding freeze across all non-verified routes. The room stirred. The total freeze affected $290 million in active vendor and policy-dependent agreements. And I regret only one thing, that I waited. Outside the hearing room, the press was swarming. Headlines were already running. She wrote the rule book, then she enforced it. Passenger Ethics Lock, the quiet weapon of reform. Grandmother turned architect of accountability. But Eleanor wasn't watching the news. She was rereading Clara's drawing, crumpled slightly, but still taped to the inside of her notebook. A seat, a small child, and a line that read, "This is my space." Back in the chamber, another senator asked, "What do you want from us?" Eleanor raised her eyes. Not new policies, not new tech, just one thing. Make dignity non-negotiable. Make silence culpable. Make ethics personal. The senator nodded. You mean hold crew personally responsible? No, I mean hold the system responsible. Because no flight attendant becomes cruel overnight. They're trained into comfort. They're groomed into silence. And we've built an entire industry that rewards indifference more than empathy. At one point, a skeptical voice challenged her. A former airline exec asked, "Aren't you worried that if we push too far, we'll scare good people out of the job?" Eleanor didn't even flinch. Good people don't fear accountability. They fear being told to look away. That line hit hard. Even the gallery stilled. By mid-afternoon, the hearing turned to Clara. One senator asked if she would be testifying. Eleanor shook her head. She's 6. Her voice has already been heard. But would you let us include her quote in the final report? Eleanor looked down for a moment, then nodded. If it stays untouched. As the day wound down, Eleanor made one final statement. This wasn't about a child being hurt. It was about an industry being exposed. We fly millions of people each day, but if a 6-year-old can't sit in a seat she paid for, then maybe we're not in the transportation business anymore. We're in the permission business, and that, senators, is unacceptable. Outside, the wind was colder than she remembered. Clara ran up, rabbit in one hand, hot chocolate in the other. Was it scary? Eleanor smiled. No, just necessary. Clara nodded solemnly. Did they listen? Eleanor paused. They heard. We'll see if they listen. It started as a policy memo. 12 pages, dry language, a standard FAA internal circulation. Subject line, temporary implementation of the Clara Passenger Ethics Standard, trial period. No fanfare, no press conference, just a quiet directive with a soft name and heavy consequences. Within 48 hours, things began to shift. The first sign came from JFK. A gate agent had flagged a complaint about a child traveling alone. She was 9, black, holding her boarding pass tight, asking if Gate 42C really existed. The staff had told her to wait. This time, the new passenger dignity monitor, installed per the Clara standard, flagged the moment. The system asked one question. Has this child received equal treatment and communication compared to other minors in the last 10 minutes? When the answer was uncertain, the alert pinged up the chain. A supervisor responded. The child was escorted onto the plane with respect, personally introduced to the crew, and seated beside a flight attendant until takeoff. No one had to make a call. The system simply worked as it was supposed to. Elsewhere, changes moved slower. Some crews resisted. More paperwork, more cameras, more ways to get blamed. But not everyone pushed back. A young attendant at O'Hare said it best in a training room. If we can carry oxygen masks for emergencies, maybe we can carry dignity for every flight. Her comment made it into the FAA internal digest. They called her response the oxygen rule. Meanwhile, East Union Airlines faced something far worse than bad PR. Their ethics score, previously in the acceptable zone, dropped to conditionally suspended. What that meant, ESG-linked investment froze, $113 million held. Vendor partnerships paused. 14 airport service contracts put on review. Flight clearance over Canada and EU delayed. Compliance audits triggered automatically. One headline said it all. One slap, $290 million gone, and counting. Behind closed doors, their leadership met with federal auditors. They offered retraining packages, PR campaigns, and even payout settlements. But none of it mattered, because the FECG, Federal Ethics Compliance Gateway, wasn't asking for apologies. They were waiting for something else. They were waiting for East Union to sign the CLARA Charter. The CLARA Charter wasn't a law. It wasn't even a regulation, yet. It was a declaration written by 19 experts across law, tech, psychology, and civil rights. At the center, Eleanor Whitmore. Its core premise was simple. No passenger under 18 or over 65 should ever bear the burden of proving their right to dignity. And it came with hard requirements. Biometric ethics alerts for flagged behavior, random audits of crew-passenger interaction patterns, a new silence clause for employees who failed to report discrimination. Eleanor never called it the CLARA Charter in public. She called it the aisle standard. If a child walks down that aisle and feels invisible, then the rest of your policies are just window dressing. Her phrasing stuck. By week 3, 4 major airlines signed on. By week 4, the FAA recommended the charter as a federal model. Not everyone was on board. Cable talk shows ran their usual cycle. Is this a witch hunt against hardworking crews? Are we overcorrecting because of one incident? Do kids now have more power than pilots? But something shifted when a retired black flight captain appeared on air. His voice cracked slightly as he said, "I spent 32 years flying Boeing jets, and the hardest day of my life was when my 5-year-old granddaughter got asked if she was really in the right seat on my own airline. I wish the CLARA Standard had been there then." Silence followed. For once, no one interrupted him. Clara didn't know most of this. She was just living her life, going back to school, doodling quietly in class, asking why the library had old carpet smell. But once, she caught her name on TV. She turned to Eleanor and said, "Am I famous?" Eleanor laughed. "You're important, that's better." Meanwhile, Eleanor was invited to speak at an aviation conference. She declined. Instead, she sent in a short video. In it, she simply looked into the camera and said, "A plane can go 500 miles an hour, but respect travels even faster, and so does harm. Choose which one you want to carry." The room went silent. It received a standing ovation. By the end of month 2, something unprecedented happened. The FAA published a mandatory ethics module named after a child. CLARA 101, Passenger Safety Beyond the Physical. It became required viewing for all new flight attendants, gate agents, in-flight security contractors, and soon, it wasn't just about airlines. 3 major cruise lines adopted it. 2 interstate rail carriers joined. Even a hotel chain began rewriting guest treatment protocols under its guidance. Clara, of course, still had no clue what infrastructure ethics protocol meant. She just knew she didn't want anyone else to feel like she had. One rainy afternoon in Boston, Eleanor received a message on paper, mailed, not emailed. It was from a woman named Barbara Monroe, the same flight attendant. It was a handwritten letter. "I have no excuse. I know what I did. I've been fired. I've been sued. But nothing hit me harder than hearing that your granddaughter didn't cry. She didn't cry because she's used to being hurt quietly, isn't she? I'm sorry I added to that silence. You don't have to respond. But I needed to say it, not for me, for her." Eleanor read it once, folded it, tucked it away. Not for forgiveness, but as a reminder that even the guilty can learn if the world stops pretending silence is safe. The terminal at Boston Logan Airport looked the same. Same security lines, same rolling announcements, same dull gray floors. But for Eleanor Whitmore, everything felt different. Today wasn't about fighting. Today was about flying. For the first time since it happened. And Clara was right there beside her, Bunny tucked into her backpack, wearing her new noise-canceling headphones like a pro. "Are we going to get apple juice on the plane?" Clara asked. Eleanor smiled. "Absolutely, even if I have to squeeze it myself." They walked past gate A7, the same gate. Clara didn't notice. She was too busy watching a pilot wave at her from across the corridor. But Eleanor paused, just for a second. Not to relive the pain, but to acknowledge what had changed. She noticed a new sign at the counter. "This is a Clara-certified airline." Below it, a QR code linking to the airline's passenger dignity score. She didn't need to scan it. She already knew. On board, the flight attendant knelt down in front of Clara before takeoff. "Hi there. Just wanted to say you've got the coolest backpack I've seen all day, and I'm here if you need anything, okay?" Clara looked surprised, then nodded, gripping her bunny tighter. The attendant turned to Eleanor with a small, knowing smile. "Welcome back, ma'am." Eleanor didn't say much. She just gave a polite nod. But in that tiny exchange, there was something heavy and healing. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Eleanor glanced outside, not at the clouds, at the people, passengers boarding without fear, elderly folks being offered help instead of judgment, children seen as humans, not afterthoughts. And for the first time in months, she let herself breathe. Midway through the flight, the captain came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we want to take a moment to thank you for flying with us today. We're proud to be one of the first carriers to fully adopt the Clara Charter. We believe dignity flies with every seat, and that even the smallest voices deserve to be heard." There was a soft wave of applause. Clara didn't clap. She just leaned over and whispered, "That's about me, isn't it?" Eleanor touched her granddaughter's cheek. "That's about you, yes, and all the kids who never got to speak." After landing, they stepped off the plane together. No fanfare, no press, just one clean walk through the jet bridge. But just before they reached the baggage claim, a woman tapped Eleanor gently on the shoulder. "Excuse me, are you her?" Eleanor turned slowly. The woman looked nervous. She had a toddler in one arm and a suitcase in the other. "I just wanted to say thank you. My son has autism. Traveling used to be a nightmare, but now the crew knew how to talk to him. They even gave us time to board first. That never used to happen." Eleanor blinked, then nodded. She didn't say anything fancy. Just, "I'm glad." Outside the terminal, the sun broke through. Boston was still loud, still busy, still fast. But for Eleanor and Clara, the world had softened, just a bit. Clara held her grandmother's hand as they waited for their ride. She looked up and said, "Grandma?" "Yes, honey?" Clara smiled. "Next time, I want to sit by the window." Eleanor laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it meant Clara wasn't afraid anymore. Back at home, tucked on a quiet bookshelf, sat a new copy of the FAA's updated training manual. On the cover, in small print, were the words, "Informed by the Clara Standard." And next to it, on the last page, under acknowledgments, it read, "For those who don't yell, for those who don't cry, for those who sit quietly, waiting for someone to do what's right." It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Everyone in the industry knew who wrote it. 2 weeks later, letters started showing up. Not to Clara, not even to Eleanor, but to the FAA, to Congress, to airline customer service centers that had ignored passengers for years. One was from a 67-year-old woman in Missouri. "When I was in my 30s, I was kicked off a flight because I asked for assistance boarding. They told me I was slowing things down. I never flew again, until now. I just booked a ticket. I saw the Clara logo and felt safe. Thank you." Another came from a flight attendant in Phoenix. "I used to think we were just here to enforce rules, but now I realize we're the first line of care. I treated a young boy with Tourette's last week. I didn't flinch. That's because of Clara. That's because of you." One was short. It simply read, "I sat in 3B. I saw what happened. I didn't stand up then, but now I do. Every time." No signature, just a return address from Minnesota. But not all letters came from strangers. One envelope came directly to Eleanor's home. No return address. Inside was a single folded page. "I was Barbara's supervisor." I knew she'd been warned before, but I ignored it. I thought she was just having a bad day. I see now that silence is complicity. I'm out of the industry, but I'm not done learning. Tell your granddaughter she changed more than rules. She changed people. Eleanor didn't show Clara that one. She didn't need to. Clara was too busy drawing a picture of a plane with a smiley face on its wing and handing it to their mail carrier for the next person who's scared to fly. But what mattered more than the letters was what they triggered. By the end of the month, 9 more airlines voluntarily adopted the Clara Charter. The Canadian Transport Authority requested to translate it into French. A coalition of school districts reached out to apply the framework for field trip travel protections. The ripple had gone beyond runways. It had entered classrooms, buses, ferries, and even corporate retreat protocols. And yet, for Clara, life remained wonderfully normal. She still wore her fuzzy socks around the house, still asked if spaghetti counted as breakfast food, still got frustrated when her iPad wouldn't update fast enough. And that was the point. She hadn't become a celebrity. She had become safe. One evening, while tucking her in, Eleanor whispered, "You know, the world is a little different now." Clara blinked sleepily. "Because of me?" Eleanor nodded. "Because you sat still, and the world finally moved." The conference room was glass-walled, sunlit, and far too sterile. It didn't match the story that brought everyone here. A child had been slapped, a grandmother had made a phone call, and an entire industry had bent around a moment that should have never happened. Now, they were trying to make sure it never would again. On the screen behind Eleanor, the slide was simple. The Clara Standard, not just policy, a promise. She didn't speak right away. She looked out at the room. FAA officials, airline CEOs, state regulators, ethics board members. Some looked ready, some looked annoyed. Some looked deeply uncomfortable. Eleanor exhaled and said, "We spend billions on jet engines, radar systems, and air traffic control. But all Clara wanted that day was a little kindness and a juice box." The room went quiet. We talk about passengers like data points. We talk about children like cargo, but they remember. They carry these moments longer than we know. She clicked to the next slide. No text, just a photo of Clara sleeping in her car seat, Bunny tucked in her arms, bruise faintly visible under her eye. "This is what failure looked like. And you don't fix this with PR. You fix it with people." Later, when the vote was called, the motion passed. The FAA officially integrated the Clara Charter into the National Aviation Ethics Framework. The Clara 101 module became federally mandated for all airlines operating in or over U.S. airspace. It was unanimous, not because they wanted to, because they had to. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. A small regional airline in Georgia requested a license expansion. Normally, these go through quietly, but this time, they attached a note. "Our training program has adopted 100% of the Clara Standard. We would also like to name our new Airbus A320 fleet after the children who changed this industry. First aircraft name, Clara 01. The FAA approved it with no edits. A year later, Eleanor and Clara flew again. Different airline, different route. But when they boarded, the flight attendant knelt and said, "Miss Clara, it's an honor." Clara didn't recognize her. That didn't matter. She smiled and replied, "You're welcome." On that flight, something strange happened. Clara asked to sit in the aisle seat, not the window. Eleanor blinked. "Why?" Clara shrugged. "So if someone's scared, I can help them get out." Eleanor smiled, holding back a tear. It wasn't about the slap anymore. It was about who Clara was becoming. And as the plane rose above the clouds, Eleanor looked out the window. The sky was still blue, the world still flawed. But somewhere in that quiet climb, she realized her granddaughter had done something extraordinary. She didn't just make the plane land that day. She made the entire system look down, see itself, and decide it could be better. Across terminals, new signs quietly appeared. Passenger dignity starts here. This airline adheres to the Clara standard. And under that, because silence doesn't mean safety. For all the drama, all the media, all the lawsuits, the ending wasn't loud. It was a nap on Grandma's shoulder. A juice box offered without being asked. A child finally seen, not sized. The world didn't change overnight, but it shifted. One gate, one aisle, one quiet act at a time. Because of Clara, because of one call, and because sometimes the smallest people carry the biggest truths. If you were in Eleanor's shoes, what would you have done differently? Let us know.